And now, the First Alert Storm Team, live from the 13 Now Digital Desk. This is Tropic Topics, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning and Mariana Toyota.
Hello everyone, it is Tropic Topics. I think we're on episode 5 this year, which speaks to how quiet it certainly has been. We've been doing it a little bit differently, trying to only come to you guys on Tropic Topics whenever there's actually stuff to talk about instead of just filling time every day or every week, because we felt like that was bringing you better value. And certainly that's what we're doing here. And as you can see right at the bottom there, the drought is over. So we were currently on the longest streak. We still are on the longest streak between hurricanes. We are at the third longest streak on record between hurricanes in the Atlantic. However, we did end the tropical drought as far as named storms. Tropical storm Danielle did form today. It's not a threat to the U.S. It's not a threat to our area. But it likely is going to become a hurricane, possibly even all the way up to a Category 2 or Category 3, even though it is really far north. And we'll be talking more about that in just a second. We're still watching 91L, which is the wave we've been watching all this week. That one, the model's kind of backing off on whether it's even going to develop at all. And it, too, is not really much of a threat to the U.S., could send some waves toward the East Coast, and potentially we could even see it send maybe some issues toward Bermuda, but not going to be a threat to us. And then there's a couple of other waves that we'll be watching down the road, and we're going to get to all of that. We're also going to talk about, yes, why the season has been so quiet so far. We're going to have information on that. We're also going to be talking about the potential for the rest of the season, how that outcome could happen, and what I see for the rest of the season, where we should be watching, things like that. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, make sure that you are communicating with us. I do have the Facebook Lives up from the WMBB page to my page, as well as Grace and Kristen's page, all pulled up. So no matter which page you're watching on, if you're on Facebook and you want to ask a question, just go ahead and write it in the comment section, and I will do my best to answer those questions for you. And just to make sure that you do know that I am watching, I know that Ellie Jo Miles said hey back to me. So there you go. I am watching those answers. But ask those questions and we will get to them. We will talk all about what you can get to those questions and answer them, and I'll try to answer all the questions that you got. So let's jump right into it. We're going to start off with our current conditions, because that's how I always like to start things off. And out there now, we are talking about, no, not the drought here, because we certainly don't have one, but we're talking about showers and thunderstorms. And the sea breeze getting an early start today. That's where those storms are developing along and moving off to the north and west. So we've had some heavier downpours, especially out on the beach, and continuing to move off to the north and west. We'll see scattered activity all day long today. So even though you've had a round come through potentially in your area, you're probably going to see a second round. You might even see a third round. You can kind of see a spin up there into Georgia as well as off to our south. That's because that is the leftover trough. And there's a couple little mid-level spins there helping to enhance lift along with that. So this is what's going to be bringing us shower and thunderstorm activity as we do go through the next several days, unfortunately, even as we go through Labor Day weekend. So you can see that trough there with the L. That is the mid-level low. It's going to be sliding off to the north and west, but you'll keep the moisture around, and we're going to keep that southerly flow as well. So that should bring shower and thunderstorm activity across the area, not only through the rest of today, but also as we go into our Friday, and unfortunately Saturday and Sunday as well. That moisture just keeps on hanging out. So earlier this week, I was certainly hopeful that we would get some drier conditions for Sunday and Monday. It doesn't really look like that. It looks like we're going to see pretty abundant widespread showers and storms across the area. How about those Gulf water temperatures? So when you're watching other places, and I see the Weather Channel talk about this a lot too, it's called ocean heat content. And that certainly is a big aspect into tropical development, is how warm the waters are. And it's going to play a role into the subtropical system. Even though it is fully tropical, it is in the subtropics. We'll be talking about how the heat of the water is playing an impact there as well. But overall, you need 80-degree water temperatures. And until you have a storm, warm water is just warm water. So the Gulf water could be 95. And if there's no storm to take advantage of that, it doesn't matter. And if you have high shear and dry air, the warm water it doesn't matter. So ocean heat content gets overplayed way too often as to how important it is into tropical development. The Gulf has been warm all year long. We've had 3 systems run across the Gulf of Mexico. We've actually had more than that. We've had quite a few Gulf waves that have come in, just haven't been able to develop because of shear and dry air that's been in place. So even though we've had warm Gulf waters all season long to this point, that doesn't mean that you necessarily get all of that tropical activity. It has to do with air stability, has to do with how humid the air is. All of those things are big factors into eventually what develops and where it develops. But once you get a storm that has developed and it's in maturity, then the ocean heat content becomes into play. So that's something to definitely keep in mind whenever you're hearing somebody scream, oh, the Gulf is on fire or the Atlantic is on fire. Okay, well, it's just one possible ingredient into tropical development. So let's get on to what is out there at this point in time. And right now we have 3 separate waves. We have, well, 2 waves and now Danielle. And I meant to take down the chances of formation because obviously it's already formed, but you get the idea here. We're watching 91L, which is the red X at the bottom of the screen. It still has a 60 to 80% chance of developing, and it is wedged between 2 big masses of dry air. That really has been the limiting factor into the development of that. It has had to deal with a little bit of upper level shear thanks to an upper level low or tut off to the north. It seems that it has kind of broken free of that at this point in time, but it's still battling that dry air. So convection's flaring up, and then it ingests dry air into the middle, and then that pushes the convection down, and those thunderstorms just can't sustain themselves. And you have to have consistent thunderstorm activity around the center for these tropical systems to develop. We also have another wave coming off of the coast of Africa. That one, it is going to run in smack dab into that massive blob of dry air in front of it. The models have really backed off on the potential development with that wave as well. So good news there. None of these are a threat to the U.S. at this point in time, so that is also good news. So a little bit more on 91L here, and you'll note the model ensembles showing up here. We call these the spaghetti models because they look like somebody threw wet spaghetti noodles on the screen. But what in reality they are different hurricane or high resolution models showing different possible solutions to the wave itself. So how are they different from the forecasting models we use day to day is that they are high resolution, very, very tight window models. So they do not take into account what's going on globally. They only take into account the environment around the tropical system for about 20 kilometers away. So sometimes you can get really funny interactions with these hurricane models because if something is outside that 20-kilometer window and moves into the 20-kilometer window, you can have some really weird outputs on that stuff. So spaghetti models are not always do or die. They're not always correct. There are some weird solutions as to how they do develop, but that's how they're different. And you can see that the models have continued to trend. This system is not going to move toward that no-flow zone that we were concerned about earlier this week and move to the weakness in the ridge. And then you can also see Danielle there at the top of the screen just to the north of that big high-pressure system. That also is helping to create a weakness in the ridge. So regardless of whether 91L develops and stalls, eventually it's going to find that weakness and curve out. So 91L will not be a threat to the U.S. whatsoever. So that is certainly good news because it's really the only tropical wave out there that was potentially a concern for our area or really the U.S. in general because all the other tropical waves really don't stand much of a chance at this point in time. So digging a little bit deeper, you can see the wave coming off of the coast of Africa there, sliding out and then recurving 91L and see the window of where it will eventually recurve. And then you've got Danielle at the top of the screen. It's going to sit basically where it is for quite a little while, maybe all the way through next Monday or Tuesday before it starts to shift off to the north. And now the National Hurricane Center has their forecast at a Category 1 hurricane. Just by the look of it and the environment that it has, I'm willing to bet that this goes Cat 2 or maybe even all the way up to 3, which is extremely rare in those high latitudes like that. And there are some reasons for that, and one of those reasons is just warm water up in the subtropics. We've kind of displaced the water this year. The subtropical water, which is usually relatively cool to our tropical water, has kind of flipped. We have cooler waters in the subtropics just north of the main development region, and we have warmer waters north of the cool waters. So we've kind of flipped as far as the pattern goes in the Atlantic, and that is helping to create this subtropical, now fully tropical system that is now up there. So what are the limiting factors, if you've been worried or concerned or wondering, should be the better question here, on why this year has been so quiet thus far? Well, it's a bunch of factors. And no, it's not that climate change is not climate changing. It has to do with the fact that we've got just a very weird pattern that has set up and has helped mitigate the factors that are there in favor for a positive season. So we still have the warm waters that are in place, which would point to a positive season. We still have low shear, which would point to an active season. But instead, we've had a ton of dry air, which is what we're showing right here. And you can see that there's still a ton of dry air out there. I got asked the question, did we miss the Saharan dust this year? Well, we've had several rounds of it here. Basically, anytime in the summer when you look up and the skies are clear and it's just like milk hazy in the sky, it's either sea spray or it's Saharan dust. And we have had that quite a bit already this year. So that is one of the contributing factors to why the season has been so quiet, is we've just had a lot of dust. Now, Saharan dust doesn't hang out at the surface. It hangs out in the mid and upper levels. So what that really inhibits is not tropical systems that have already formed. It inhibits tropical systems that are trying to form. So note just how quiet it's been. We didn't have a name system from July 3rd all the way to September 1st between name systems. Well, there's been a lot of dry air. We've had a lot of waves out there. They just haven't been able to develop because they've been running into this mass amount of dry air. So as the thunderstorms try to go up, they hit that cap of dry air and they fade. So remember, I was just talking about you need sustained thunderstorm activity around the center for tropical waves to develop. Regardless of how warm the water is, if there is a bunch of dry air above it, it doesn't matter. You're going to hit that cap and those storms are going to collapse, and then voila, you don't get a tropical genesis. And that has been really one of the main contributing factors to why the season has been so quiet. The other one is probably something that I have mentioned quite a bit, which is stability of the air. So this is what I'm talking about. Notice the subtropics here on the northern coast of Africa. Cool water is there. And this year we actually have an Atlantic La Nina. So last year we were in an Atlantic El Nino, which means that equatorial water just south of the main development region there, where you see cool water right next to the first alert storm team logo, that is cool water in comparison to what it usually is climatologically. So why does this matter? Well, you have the trade winds that are pushing that air toward the area where we usually see tropical development, and with that, it has kept stability into the air. So that cool air, meaning temperatures in the 80s, and then you have water temperature in the main development region where you see warm water. The water temperature there is in the 86, 87 range, or 85, 84 range. Well, you have these 78-degree temperatures that are moving over that. Well, that's stable air. That's cool air moving over warm water. So again, things try to rise, it hits the cooler air, and it's stable. It can't continue to rise. So you add the fact that you've got dry air already in place, and then you have stable conditions in place with the trade winds pushing that stable conditions over, then voila, you have stability in the Atlantic. So that is the other contributing factor. And then last but not least, the wave break pattern that we have had. Now, I talk about TUTs quite a bit. And so what are TUTs? They're tropical upper tropospheric troughs. So they are troughs not at the surface, they're troughs in the mid and upper levels. So again, that leads to suppressive air around them. And we have had these long stretched out TUTs that have just been going across the Atlantic based on our overall synoptic pattern. So these three things, dry air, stable air, and the TUTs that have been in place across the Atlantic thanks to our overall synoptic weather pattern, have all contributed to what would be mitigating factors against what should have been an active season to this point in time. Now, will these factors continue to inhibit tropical activity? I don't know. Well, we should see a shift as we get into the middle and end of October, or middle and end of September going into October. We should see a shift away from the MDR and closer to home, and we'll start watching things try to develop in the Caribbean and in the Gulf of Mexico and then in the Gulf Stream. So those contributing factors that are in place right now won't necessarily be factors to inhibit that activity in the Caribbean and in the Gulf and on the Gulf Stream in the Atlantic. So as we get toward the middle and end of September going into October, that's where the potential for the homegrown systems on cold fronts and stuff like that could be areas to watch. Weather, also, as we get toward the end of September and into October, we start to see wind shear pick up because we do have cold fronts coming in. Our weather pattern becomes more active. We get bigger dips in the jet stream. So the question will be, how long do we hold off fall, and how quickly do we increase wind shear across those areas? So if we have a very early fall and we have a very early winter this year, then I would say wind shear is going to be high and will probably inhibit tropical activity in the Gulf and the Caribbean. If we hold off on our fall season and we don't get a bunch of cold fronts to come down here and we're not seeing colder air in as the time we get into October, then we're probably talking about a backloaded or active season into the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. So those are the things to watch as we go forward. But certainly right now, things are looking very, very positive. And you can see that secondary peak here on our tropical chart. So we are halfway through the tropical season. Hooray, ring the bell. Halfway through. Do we have a sound effect for that? Not sure what button it is, but we have a sound effect. Yeah, so be happy because we are halfway through the season, and the peak of hurricane season is September 10th. So from that point forward, we should be seeing activity go down. You can see a secondary peak around October 20th, and that is thanks to cold fronts coming in and that homegrown tropical activity. There you go, I heard the applause. So yeah, ringing the bell. Halfway through the season, the applause. So we just have 3 more months to go. I know, it feels like hurricane season lasts forever, but thankfully we are talking about a historically quiet season thus far. We'll see how backloaded it actually is as we head toward the middle and end of September going into October. But right now, again, things are looking really, really good. So for us going back here at home, unfortunately, if you are concerned about a wet weekend, yeah, it's probably going to be wet. Now, not washout type of weather. We're talking showers and thunderstorms scattered across the area. Just good chances that your full day is not going to be dry. That's what we have for the holiday weekend. I am still planning on doing outdoor activity. I think you should still plan on doing outdoor activity. Just make sure you've got the Storm Track 13 app handy. Not only can you keep up with the tropical conditions that are ongoing, but you can also get the notifications like when lightning is within 15 miles and also when rain is nearby. It comes in handy, and I use it daily. I'm not just pitching that. I literally use it daily. I have over 17 different locations around the Panhandle tagged on the app, and they all notify me when storms are nearby. So I really love it when one of you all out there says, it's raining in blah, blah, blah location. I already know it's raining in blah, blah, blah location. You don't have to tell me. I do appreciate the report, but you don't have to tell me. And that's mainly because the app allows me to see that shower and thunderstorm activity pop up as it's happening, which is why I know the app is so handy. So yeah, there is that as well. So let's draw it to a close here and see what it is, the Storm Track 13 app there, Julie. You can download it on the Google Play or the App Store. Either or, we'll have that. And I'm trying to pull up the live chat on, hey, there we go. So let's get to the questions. And I'm going to scroll it back here to our current tropical conditions. So just give me a second while we do that. Go ahead, Spencer. What's your...
I got a question from Facebook.
Yeah.
Casper says, can you briefly explain why the activity in the eastern Pacific helps the Gulf quiet?
Yeah, great question. So what happens in the eastern Pacific is when we have tropical systems there, tropical systems need outflow, so high pressure system aloft. So unlike our synoptic systems that actually work on an angle. So if you think about the atmosphere and you being down here, the low pressure system is actually back here. So if it's raining down here, your low pressure system is actually slanted. So that's what happens over land. Well, in the Atlantic or in the Pacific or in tropics, you actually don't want to tilt to the column. You want the column to be vertically stacked. And the reason for that is because we're working with heat fluxes off of the surface. So we're taking that heat, we're radiating it up, and then we're allowing that outflow back. So that's what creates that circular eye. That's what creates the circular motion, and that allows for all of that energy to go up and then out. So around tropical systems, it actually enhances wind shear. So when we're talking about looking at these models and long-range models, we're talking about the potential of how they're affecting the weather pattern. So not only are we trying to guess whether the model's correct on the resolution of the system and when it develops the system, but also how it's affecting the weather pattern around it and how that inevitably affects the storm. Well, in the Eastern Pacific, when you get these storms, they develop, they throw wind shear back across the Caribbean and even into the Gulf of Mexico, and that inhibits any tropical waves that are coming in there from being able to develop, because that wind shear takes that column that's vertical and it shears it off. So tropical systems, they don't want the tilt, they want it to be vertical, and whenever you've got that shear, it's tilting that column. So as it's trying to develop and align that column, it's just getting continually blown back to pieces. And that's how if you have stuff going on in the Caribbean, you probably don't have anything in the Eastern Pacific. If you have stuff in the Eastern Pacific, you probably don't have anything in the Caribbean. So it kind of works both ways. So that was a good question. Okay, you got it pulled up. Do you all expect the Panhandle to receive any kind of tropical systems? So if you think back to when I think the first show that we did, it was just opening day of the season. I said that what I thought was going to happen with this year was that we were going to see stuff suppressed into the Caribbean, and that we would see the Atlantic eventually get active, but East Coast threats being the main concern, mainly because the synoptic pattern that we have going on is very, very similar to 2013, 2011, and 2001. Now, you can get something developed homegrown, and we have had that happen already with Colin. That was a tropical system that just popped up off of a cold front. So we certainly could see that, and I could see something maybe subtropical as we head toward October, possibly trying to develop off of a front and working along a front through the Gulf of Mexico. I could certainly see us being affected by something like that this year. But these long waves going through the MDR into the Caribbean and then running up, I don't really foresee that happening. And but I am in the camp that we are going to see an early fall. Maybe not here, but definitely across the U.S., and that will certainly help. Limit any kind of ability for Gulf of Mexico type of stuff. So that kind of reinforces the pattern of an East Coast threat, is that you keep getting these troughs to dig on in, and with that, it kind of steers things up the East Coast and keeps it away from the Gulf of Mexico. So yeah, I mean, we could see something, sure, but I don't see it as being a likely outcome until maybe October. It's end of September, maybe October. That's when things become a little more favorable for the Gulf and Caribbean in general, just climatologically speaking. But I think wind shear is going to pick up. So I think this year, at least for now, it looks positive. But you should always stay on guard. You should always be ready. We know all too well that even in average seasons or quiet seasons, that it only takes one system. I mean, that's it. One system to hit the area, and it's a bad season. So, stay on guard, stay prepared, but certainly things are looking good right now. It's a good question. What else? I'm scrolling through here on mine. So I got to Casper's question. I see that. That was a good question. I see Kristen was watching earlier. Okay, and then let's see. I've got people commenting about where it's raining. That kind of stuff. So let me check the other pages and see what comments are on the other pages. And if I don't have any other questions there, then we will wrap this up and we'll move on. But yeah, so far tropical season, things have been playing out pretty well for us, which is good news. Hopefully that does continue. Like I said, right now out there, we can only take this about 5 to 10 days at a time. That's how good the tropical models are. Once you get past 10 days, you're really looking at a lot of stuff where they're working off of their own solutions to problems that arose during that 5 to 10 day stretch that they're forecasting. So that's why we say really should ignore those long range models, especially those doom runs that get posted. We had a bunch of doom runs posted last week from the GFS on a tropical system that never developed. So That's what those pages do. They're trying to get your clicks and attention on social media, and they're going to post anything that will get your clicks and attention. And you can defend it saying, well, they said this is just a model. Well, that's fine. They can say that and they can post that. But the fact of the matter is that most people that are seeing that, even at a passing glance, they're not reading it. They're looking at the picture and they're going, oh my gosh, a tropical system is going to hit Florida in 12 days. And how I know that is because I get asked questions. Is it going to hit Florida in 12 days? And I'm like, it's 12 days down the road and it's one model. So no, that's how I know that that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to get your attention with these flashy pics and posts that aren't real, and they know they're not real, but they're going to post them anyways because they get attention, because fear spreads so much faster on social media than actual real content. If I post something is not going to happen and somebody posts something that is going to happen, their stuff's going to be shared 14 times more than my stuff that says it's not going to happen, because people are like, oh, it's not going to happen, and then they don't share it. But when someone's like, oh my gosh, we're all going to die in 12 days, that gets shared rapidly. So that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to get your attention by scaring you, and it's nonsense. So, make sure that if you are on one of those pages, you are watching one of those pages, and for all of the Mike's Weather Page fans out there, I'm not talking about Mike. Yeah, he does that too, but I'm talking specifically about other pages. So I'm not just talking about him. He does do that occasionally. I'm talking about other pages. There's other pages on social media that are way worse than what Mike posts. He posts a lot of information and he has a lot of quality content on there. So I'm not talking about him, because that's going to be the first comment on what I'm doing here. So I'm talking about other pages. There are plenty of them out there that will post and scare the snot out of you for absolutely no reason. So forgot what I was doing. Looking for questions, but I think we've got just about all of them out here. Yep, and the other pages are quiet as well, so we'll wrap it up right there. So if you've got any questions, comments, or concern, you can always reach out to me on social media. I'm pretty active. I see most of the comments on most of the posts, so if you're posting something, I'm certainly probably going to read it. And I'll do my best to answer those questions as well. But make sure you're tuning in tonight, 5, 6, and 10. We'll be talking about the tropics even more. So I'll have more commentary on that as well, and we'll be talking a little more detail about forecast, what you could expect. But unfortunately, showers and thunderstorms are going to continue to hang around. So that's not going anywhere, unfortunately. So that's going to do it for this round. We will likely, if the activity stays active in the Atlantic, if we still have areas of interest and tropical stuff out there, we'll probably do at least one show next week, depending on what looks like and what potentially will develop. If it looks like there could be a threat to the U.S. at the end of next week, potentially, if that were to arrive, then certainly we would do more than that. But for now, we'll just plan on until next time.
Thank you for watching Tropic Topics, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning and Marietta Toyota. Be sure to download the StormTrack 13 app today to stay up to date with all of the latest weather information. For more local news, weather, sports, and more, visit mypanhandle.com.